Strong Enough merch is now available. Go to strongenoughpod.com and see all the things that you can get to show your strong enough pride, as well as remind people and yourself that you are strong enough and you are worth it. Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest absolutely loves furry friends and humans. She's going to talk about why it matters to her to help animals and support human rights. Please help me welcome Lisa Wilkes. Lisa, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. It's so good to be here.
It is great to have you here. And I have to tell you, we have only been hanging out for a couple minutes, but I already love your energy. I love your smile. For those of you who can't see it, she has an amazing smile. And I am just super excited to chat with you today.
Same. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I love the whole concept, the whole theme of this podcast. I think it's very empowering, and I am happy to just dive right in.
Perfect. Well, since you said it, let's dive right in. I would love it if you would start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. I am Lisa Wilkes. I live here in Tampa, and for those of you that can't see, I do have a foster cat on my lap, it was just inevitable. I am a flight attendant. I'm an animal rescuer. I'm a licensed social worker, and I am an author. And every room of this apartment has rescue animals in it. I intend to keep it that way. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I just got my licensing for social work. I got that about 6 months ago, and I've been tutoring a lot of grad students and kind of getting involved in local activism. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
That is exciting stuff. I want to start with what I connected with most, and that is the foster animals, because I
Good. I
definitely an
love talking about
animal
animals.
lover, right? I am suspect of people who don't love animals, so I'm not too sure about those. But I would love to hear first off how many that you have right now, but how did you get into that?
So currently, I have my three permanent babies. So I have my dog and my two cats, and then I have two fosters here. I've been doing a lot of work with the local rescues here in Tampa. We moved to Tampa. We were in Texas before that, but we moved to Tampa last year, and I work with three local rescues. And then at the airline, I'm on our animal transport team. I'm on the leadership board there. So I'm doing like a little rescue flight in 2 days, actually, that I'm like super stoked about. But I would argue that I didn't really get into animal rescue. It's just who I am, because literally I can trace it back. My first actual memory, but my parents have said there were other times that I don't recall. My first memory was when I was about 7 or 8, and I just rescued like this injured baby bunny off the playground. I guess to me, like I've always connected with animals. I consider myself kind of a like expert level empath in general, and a lot of that extends to animals. Like I just see all of the beauty in them. I see all the innocence, and I've always felt kind of just intrinsically linked to animals. So as a child, I rescued that bunny. I rescued a couple. We had a couple cats growing up, and then in my adult years, like I was rescuing kittens on the campus of college, like when I went to UF, and it was just what I did, because if I saw something in need, I would help it. But then after college, I got involved in a lot of the rescues because I didn't really understand how big of a need there is. I didn't understand that certain states, particularly Texas and Florida, but it would make your head spin to learn about the amount of animals that are euthanized here that are healthy. It's sickening and wrong, and that's why I'm fighting so hard to change it. But the local shelters, they euthanize. I call it the kill room, and I work with local rescues to do my best to just get animals out of there, out of that situation, out of that setting. They're really overpopulated in certain states, and the problem's really bad in certain states, and that's why the animal transport team at my airline, we fly these rescued animals that get adopted elsewhere. Like there's not as big of an overpopulation problem in the Northeast or out in the Western states. And so we fly a lot of the animals out there where they've been adopted. So we're trying to kind of get the nation no kill one animal at a time. And it's a pretty big effort. Yeah.
I absolutely love that, and I love that your airline does something so big, to play a part in that. I didn't really realize, I mean, I realized what a big issue it is, but apparently here in Colorado, we are a no-kill state, and so
Colorado's amazing. That's where we send a lot of our animals to get adopted. Amazing.
and
Yeah, I love
that's what I've
Colorado.
heard, that a lot of places that are kill states will send their animals here because we're not.
Mhm.
Our neighbor actually got their, dog from a shelter here, but it came, I can't remember where, but from a no or from a kill state and was brought here. The issue that I have always felt like I would have in fostering is that it would be really hard to let them go. So how has that been for you as part of the process?
It's always hard. I mean, it's going to be hard because you get attached to the animals, but I've really been amazed. The adopters will send me updates and it kind of like makes my whole day. And we thoroughly vet all the people that adopt. So we know they're going to good homes. I get those routine updates that kind of like show me how well they're thriving. And also, like, as painful as it is to say goodbye to an animal and to like let them live their best life with another family, I kind of view it as this cycle because when an animal gets adopted, that means we have a space now to save another one that's in need. So it's kind of like this huge gift each time an animal is adopted because it's like, okay, so now we're contributing to another animal that is really at risk of being euthanized. And that's how I kind of like process it and keep it from affecting me emotionally because it's hard. It's so hard to say goodbye. And then usually, like, for a few days after they get adopted, even getting the updates from the adopter and stuff, I still just look for them around the house and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, they're with their family. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really rough for me. And I love, we have one dog now. We've had two for a while. We're down to one at this point. What is, and I don't want to say the craziest, what is the oddest or most unique animal that you have ever fostered?
So I do dogs and cats. Well, it was easier to do to foster dogs in Texas because we had a yard. So here in the apartment, we were above our pet limit before we fostered. So we have to do cats because we can't be like walking all these dogs in the hallway and then get reported. But the
Right.
cats are really small, and we keep them super clean. We keep them well cared for, and then we get them out to their new homes. But dogs and cats was like my primary focus. But like I had said, really, if there, I'd like to joke that if there's anything human or animal suffering in like a 5-mile radius, somehow I feel it. I just have a radar that like detects that. And in Texas, I rescued this duck that was injured at a lake and like brought it out to a sanctuary. But there was this one time, I swear they fined me. They like, no, I'm going to help them or something because I was mailing something. The mailbox was down the street and I walked back and I just stopped. It's like the dead of summer, 3,000 degrees outside because it's Texas. And there was just a bunny with like a little bit of blood on its leg. It was slightly injured in the street. And I'm like, um, does anyone else see this? There's just like a bunny here in a street. So I straight up carried the bunny home in my tank top, and my husband saw me on the Ring camera, and he was like, "What is that? A squirrel?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. It's cool. I'm just going to the guest bathroom for about 2 hours. Like, I'll see ya." So we put the bunny in the box with like, grass. And I went out and bought little like rabbit food at the store and then brought it to this like amazing bunny emporium the next day. It's this huge rescue that rehabilitates the bunnies that are able to be re-released. This one had a leg injury, so he's now a sanctuary bunny there.
That's so cool. Saving bunnies. Just one bunny at a time. I absolutely love it. You said you were an empath, and one of the things that I feel like happens a lot with empaths is they experience anxiety, because you're taking on, everybody else's emotions and feelings and energy, and that turns into a lot of anxiety. I would love to hear if that has been your experience, and if so, what have you done to combat that?
That was my experience before I had the words to articulate it. I did not realize growing up that my behaviors were definitely showing signs of like this anxiety that was within me. I have been a lifelong insomniac. And I just thought, okay, something's just wrong with my brain. I don't sleep at night. And it was largely a product of anxiety. But I do think that, when you're sensing all this suffering, I think not that there's anything wrong with it, but I think a lot of people can compartmentalize and they're good at it. And for me, that's really difficult. Even in like the social work realm, I kind of carry that with me. And it does induce a lot of anxiety. But I think over the years, I got my master's in social work last year. And I think learning kind of like the coping mechanisms that I then would teach to patients and clients and stuff, those are helpful. Journaling and meditation has been super helpful. I also feel like I've accepted that there will be a certain amount of just residual sadness and stress. Like that's natural and that's going to happen if you want to leave an impact. It's not something that you can really fully avoid. So I've accepted that. I try to minimize it, but also I wrote my first book when I couldn't sleep when I was 8 years old under the covers. And surprise, it was about a lost cat that was reunited with its family. And that's kind of when I discovered that it isn't necessarily a cure for anxiety, but writing really does help me so much. It helps me kind of put those emotions on the page and it helps me craft this like fictional world where I can, create the happy endings that aren't always realistic in real life. And I can express myself through that and get at least some relief.
You mentioned insomnia, and that is another thing that I am super familiar with. And I know a lot of the listeners and viewers of this podcast are also familiar with. Will you talk a little bit about your experience with insomnia and how it affected you?
It affected every single aspect of my life. There was not one single portion that was not touched by the insomnia. And I almost felt like it was this torture chamber because my brain, like, I did not know. And growing up, I did not understand. And I think my parents, I think they did their best, but I think also they were in that generation where things can be fixed with chicken noodle soup and it's not a real problem if you're not actually bleeding. And I think, like, I kind of had to learn to just cope with it on my own and try to find things that maybe helped a little bit here and there. But I really do think some people are wired differently. And I think that whatever chemical it is in your brain that helps you sleep, mine is not necessarily like functioning correctly. And I think the way that I've kind of worked through that is I do everything I possibly can on my end, which would be kind of yoga, meditation, making sure that I like have healthy coping mechanisms when we lose an animal that we're rescuing, or when one of my patients in the social work realm, like when something really drastic happens to them, making sure I have the coping mechanisms. But at the end of the day, I still do think it's just going to be a struggle. It's going to be a lifelong struggle for me. And you're in Colorado. I love Colorado. I will say, if I could freely access what I believe to be a healing vegetable, if I could access that and wasn't tested in my job, I think the world would look a lot different. And I hope we come around to that level eventually. I think in the social work realm, I can do my best to kind of like push for studies and push for like clinical research and trials, because I really do find, as far as I know, that's the only thing that seems to consistently help. And it's not a cure, but it definitely helps me find rest. And otherwise, it's just this ongoing struggle. I do my best, but I've also accepted, like, there are gonna be nights. There are gonna be nights that I just, you know, don't sleep much, and then the whole week I'm running off 3 hours or something. There are literally entire chapters in my life that I can't remember when I was younger, and obviously I was younger. There was no alcohol. There was no other reason that there would be memory loss. It was literally sleep deprivation. And I'm just doing my best to kind of like push through it and to find things that at least help a little bit here and there.
I think people don't realize a lot of times how sleep deprivation can impact us so intensely. I don't think they get it a lot of times. It's like,
It's
"Oh, you're tired.
agony.
That's okay."
No, it is agony. And then I feel like you get to a point sometimes, or at least I've gotten to this point where I'm almost afraid to go to bed because I know it's gonna be a struggle, and that makes it worse because then I, like, put it off, and then I'm thinking in my head, how many hours and minutes am I going to get tonight? Because now it's later and I'm still not tired. But it is seriously, I used to say, I don't have an enemy. If I had a worse enemy, I would not wish insomnia on them, because you want to sleep and you're exhausted, but it's like you just cannot find like that thing that you need so badly. And then you suffer the whole next day because of it, and it kind of turns into this like really vicious cycle. It's brutal. It's brutal. And people think at first glance, like when I'll talk about how I'm not a great sleeper, I've heard comments like, that's so awesome, like you kind of have like two lives because you get to live during the day and at night. And I'm like, okay, but it's not ideal, and it's not like quality living all the time when you're running off fumes and mad that you can't sleep. It's not like something desirable, right?
You talked about, and I love what you called it, the magic vegetable. And I've heard that from other people that are able to get to sleep by taking an edible or something like
Mhm.
that. So, even though it's not legal where you are, it sounds like even if it were.
It is
Oh, but you
medicinally,
not for your
but
job.
my job, yeah.
So, how does that make you feel? You know what I mean? That there is a solution so readily available, but you can't get it because of your work.
It's just so interesting to me. It's something that I will remain outspoken about. I did a grad school presentation. We were supposed to do a controversial subject, so everyone picks these social work themes, and I literally did my like 15-minute presentation, and I used like data, and I used research studies, the few that have been allowed in this country. And my whole presentation was about why we should be legalized, or why we should at least be allowed to do a lot more research into it and like consider legalizing it. But it's something that I will continue to fight for. I think the FAA is the one that sets the rules, about what we can and can't fly, what we can and can't have in our system when we're flying, I should say. And I understand that you shouldn't really have crew members that are actively high, but the problem is that it stays in your system for so long. And people can drink, they can smoke at night, and they can do all these other things, and alcohol is processed really quickly, so they're fine the next day. They're not drunk, they just drank the night before. But with weed, like, you're not going to be high the next day. You could get restful sleep. I believe it's easier on your body than alcohol, and yet that's the one that's been kind of like vilified and targeted. And also, if you look into it, because in social work, like, we did look into injustice a lot. If you look into it, the folks that were targeted, the marginalized groups that paid such a hefty price for this natural plant. This isn't a manufactured substance that people are like chemically engineering in a lab to harm other people. But just the price that they've paid, it really is shameful, in my opinion. And I mean, I'm gonna keep fighting for it. I love Colorado. I love the progress. I love the amazing things that we've been able to see in Colorado and in California, and the way that it can really help people that have PTSD, that have anxiety, that have insomnia. And I'm just waiting for the day that kind of people catch on and realize that this thing is actually a valuable tool and not something that we have to be afraid of.
I agree with you, and I don't currently have a job that tests for it, but I have as well, been in a position where, even I had a doctor that recommended it once, and he said, "I wouldn't recommend that you smoke it because then, that's
It's
getting
hard on
into
your lungs.
smoking something,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
taking it, can be beneficial for pain, for relaxation, for things like that." And so it is frustrating to me that we're not able to take advantage of that, or a lot of people aren't able to take advantage of that. What do you think it will take to get there? Just somehow more research, more people like you that are willing to stand up and talk about it?
I do think it'll take more research, because I think people, they want to be convinced of something, and it's not bad to ask for proof. There's not always definitive proof, but to at least look for trends and to see how things can affect people. So I definitely think it does require more research, but I also think now that it has been legalized and there's more states that are joining that crusade, I think seeing all of the positive that can come out of it, seeing all of the money. When I lived in Colorado years ago, and they had said, and it blew my mind, I heard on the radio, at that point, I think it had been legal for 2 years, and they had donated a billion with a B, billion to the schools in Colorado. And I just thought to myself, even aside from all the effects of like the actual substance itself, what an amazing thing. Like, you can monetize this relatively harmless substance and you can help all the kids here. I don't know. I just thought that was really inspiring. And I think when people start realizing that there can be a lot of positive effects in the community, I'll tell you, in the social work realm, I lost track of how many times my patients would talk about how a parent would drink a bunch of alcohol and then beat them senseless. I can tell you that I've never heard anyone say that their dad ate a gummy and beat them, because it doesn't happen.
Right.
So it's just not, that's not what weed does to a person. That's not what it evokes in a person. So I do think people are going to come around, but I think it's going to take time. And in the meantime, uh, I'm just going to keep doing my best to try to get some rest every now and then.
Feel you on that, and hopefully we'll both get there. I agree with you on the legalization. I think it also gives a better ability to regulate, what's out there and
Mhm.
what people are getting their hands on, because we see a lot of issues with that these days. So to
Mhm.
me, let's regulate it. Let's collect all that tax money, because I think I don't know if this number is still accurate, but it's around 24 or 26% is the tax rate on weed here. So
Mhm.
it's pretty hefty that, that the state is making money on it every time somebody buys. So just imagine, what we could do with that funding, but then how much better it could make people's lives potentially with a lot of issues that they experience, like you have, and cancer and other
Mhm.
chronic illnesses, that they're in pain and now they can't get opioids, 'cause that's a whole other thing. So it's like, what gives?
My friend in Texas is my age. He's actually 1 year older than me, but I'll be 39 next week, and had cancer and legally could not access marijuana, like, for relief of his intense pain, and that to me was just infuriating. It was infuriating, like, really? I mean, it blows my mind, but I do think people are coming around, and it starts with legalizing it medicinally, and then eventually it kind of becomes accepted that, like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad, and then it goes recreational and people can kind of just like use it how they see fit. And I do agree with you. I believe, based on what I saw in states where it was legal, I think people are willing to pay a little bit more and to pay those taxes, because they know that what they're getting is not laced with something. They know that they don't have to worry it's some synthetic. Like, I do think it's just a lot smarter of a route in general.
I agree. So I'm glad that we solved that today. So hopefully
Yes.
all the right people will listen to this and they'll know that we have fixed this problem.
Yeah, insomnia is done. It's
Right.
over.
We're good. Just mark that off the list. I want to talk to you a little bit about writing, because it
Mhm.
sounds like, it was something that you leaned on very early to help you through some of those sleepless nights. Now
Mhm.
you are an official published author. Talk a little bit about your writing, what you're writing about, and what it means to you today.
So, I wrote that first book when I was a kid and then decided I was going to be a published author someday, but I thought it was really easy and you just write books and then they're published. I didn't realize that it can be quite a grueling journey. But I wrote my first full length, like my first adult novel, when I was 19. So I was in college, and I had written three by the time I finished college, which was in 2007. And I enjoyed pouring myself into that project. I felt like it gave my mind this amazing kind of like distraction in this realm to focus on, and kind of helped enhance my relationships in real life too, because I was a little bit more attuned to like certain conversations and things that people would say, and kind of picking up on all those nuances that I then would like mirror or try to like replicate to give my book some authenticity, even though they're all fiction. But I finished college and shopped my books out and quickly discovered, wait, it's not actually that easy. And like, folks would try to give me these inspirational speeches and point to, I don't know, Harry Potter and say how the author got 7 rejections. And I was like, oh, that's really cute. I get that in one day. Like, that's cute. That's a sign of a phenomenal writer. Like, what? That makes me feel worse. Okay, great. She got 7 rejections. That's like, you nailed it. That's amazing. I get that routinely, sometimes in the span of who knows, like an hour. So I kind of started getting really disheartened and kind of like bitter, which is hard for me. I'm very much an optimist, but after so many years of so many rejections, or even the publishing houses or the literary agents that didn't even bother to write back, it was just so like heartbreaking. And I got to a point, I had 12 books written. I was about 32, I believe, and I got to a point where I didn't even tell people I wrote anymore. Like, I did web content for a couple nonprofits. I wrote some internal articles for my airline, but in terms of books, I was like, I'm not telling people this because it's embarrassing, and then they want to know where I'm published and where they can find all my works, and then I have to explain I never got published. And then something just flipped in grad school. I just had started grad school, and of course, I was sleepless one night because, that's my tendency. And I just remember lying in bed and thinking, I'm rescuing animals. I'm working full time at the airline. I am going back to get my master's. I have my hand in all these different nonprofits. I'm on like several pretty big teams at the airline. And I let other people tell me that my books weren't good enough. Like, I'm not a quitter. What the heck? Like, everything else in life, I would just keep my chin up and keep moving forward. But this, like, I allowed other people to determine my skill as a writer, and I'm not going to do that anymore. So I said to myself, I had this book that I'd scrapped a couple years earlier. I had, I think, about 40 pages written. And I said to myself, you know what? I don't care. I don't care if it never gets published. I'm going to finish that book. Maybe I'll put it on a blog someday. Maybe I'll self publish it. We'll see what happens. And I finished the book in a span of 30 days. It was semester break from my first semester of grad school. And I finished the book during semester break, and then I shopped it out in January, which would have been 2019. And I had a contract with the Wild Rose Press in New York by, I think I signed it in May. And it was just this awakening to me, kind of this like light bulb moment, because I realized the external circumstances don't determine like my passion and what I hope to convey through my writings, which is a sense of inclusion. My books are about making people feel welcomed and appreciated, and showing that like all these diverse characters can come together, and build this beautiful thing together. And I just decided, I was like, it might get published, it might not. I'm going to finish it, and then lo and behold, that is the one that like broke me into the industry. So after that, I was like, oh, now I'm going to write all the books. I'm going to write them all. So I wrote my second one during the pandemic. That one was just published on March 31st of this year. And it features a bisexual flight attendant. It's this like dystopian, futuristic realm, and it's pretty extremist. And she kind of becomes aware of some of the injustices that she's sort of turned a blind eye to. And she launches this like small scale rebellion with a few amazing people that she's met at the airline. So it's a story of everyday heroes that can use their platform and can use their voice to truly make a difference. And I wrote the book, I completed it before things kind of went a little awry in Texas, or more awry than they had been. And so as the book is, in the editing stages, Texas issued a bunch of bans and basically revoked a lot of really important human rights, in my opinion. And I watched my clients and my patients and my friends suffer, and I said, enough. So I kind of lived out my novel after it was written, and I built a website giving women resources and establishing transportation networks to nearby states that would provide legitimate medical care that they deserved, back, before the Supreme Court decision trickled down. So this was January of 2022. Yeah, January of 2022. And I built the website, and I remember looking back on it maybe like 4 or 5 months in, and I knew it was risky. I knew the chance I was taking. I told my husband, "If I get in trouble for this, this is a cause worth fighting for, and I'm fine with it. So I just need to make sure you're okay with it too." And he was, thankfully. But it was so funny because I found myself doing what my protagonist had done. Of course, she did it in 2038 in like this ridiculous sci-fi realm that's filled with like intergalactic pathogens, but I just found myself kind of like living that, and it meant that when the book was published and when I could share that book online and like kind of hopefully inspire other people through it, that it was more than just words on a page to me. It was actually kind of like a little glimpse into my life and the reality that we all can do something wherever we are. Like wherever we are, whatever stage we're in, I'm a flight attendant. I don't have tons of money. Surprise. We are not very wealthy in this industry. But like I don't have tons of money, but I have a brain, I have a laptop, I have connections that I can use to help other people. And that was my best in that moment, and I was able to contribute. So that was what my most recent book was about, and then I'm currently working on a book now that is a murder mystery, but also deals with like different dimensions, and it is a story about inclusion. One of the main characters is trans, and I wanted to highlight the humanity of all people because I live in Florida and I've watched that humanity be stripped away ruthlessly, and I'm not standing for it. I'm not putting up with it. And if my way to fight back right now is through my books, if it's through, different like online presences, I'm doing it. So here we go.
Talk about why it is so important to you to use your books to fight those fights.
I think when I was in college, I didn't really, I loved reading. My whole life I've loved reading, but I didn't really feel seen or understood. I was still exploring my own sexuality, and like I never read a story. I never read a story with a bisexual character in it. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm just probably invisible, or this isn't real, or, nobody else experiences this. And so now that I'm writing books, and now that, kind of the tables have turned and I'm the author of those stories, I am going to do everything within my power to make sure that people are included and that they are validated and that they know that they are brilliant and beautiful exactly as they are. Because it took me, I think, 36 years of my life until I read Untamed by Glennon Doyle and I felt understood. And I want to make sure that the readers out there don't have to wait 36 years to feel that.
So you talked about Texas and Florida. And when you look at our country and you look at a lot of what is going on politically and socially, you have been present in some of the states that really are kind of hitting the hardest
Mhm.
against a lot of those things. Do you
Mhm.
feel like it is your purpose to be there to fight in a place where people are so against a lot of the things that you're fighting for? Or is there another reason that you just keep ending up in these places where you got a lot to fight for?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie, I wanted out of Texas. I was done. I was like, "Look, I'm leaving. My husband can come with me or he cannot come with me, but I'm not staying." So I wanted out of Texas. It was rough toward the end, and I thought we were actually gonna move back. I've lived in Colorado, I've lived in California, I love both states. I'm kind of a warm weather girl, so I think California would probably be, like, my top choice, but I thought we'd end up back there, and he was looking for different jobs. I'm with an airline, so we have bases all over, and I did go to college here in Florida, so I went to the University of Florida, and he landed this surprise job in Tampa that was, like, something he couldn't really turn down, and I thought to myself, "Well, I honestly never expected to move back to Florida, but in a way, it felt like coming home. I have a lot of my college friends here. I've been based in Florida before, so I have a lot of my friends at the airline that are still here. And it is a very hostile political climate. But I've gotten super involved since I've been here. We moved last fall, so since we moved here, I've gotten very involved. Um, was just I was just elected to be the director of mentorship for US Association of LGBTQ plus alumni, and it's not a very safe space right now for students. And I feel like this is how I can help and I can make it a safe space and I can give them a mentor and I can pair people together and make sure that they feel that they're supported and they have an ally because they're really tense right now. And I have been doing a couple trainings with Equality Florida, which is a human rights organization really just fighting um, to make sure that the LGBTQ plus community is not like tossed right back into the past, right? So they want to maintain those basic human rights, and I'm doing everything I can, and I'm happy to keep up that fight. I feel it kind of speaks to my own privilege, the fact that if I really wanted to leave, I could, but there are a lot of people that can't and that don't have that like they just don't have that possibility. They are not able to uproot, and I feel like those are the people that I'm going to stay and fight for.
You are doing a lot. If you
A
had to
lot.
pick one thing, you had to dive into your bucket of everything that you're doing, and somebody said, "You know what, Lisa, you gotta pick one thing." Which one would you pick?
Oh my god, that's so hard. So it's going to be between. I can tell you this much. I can't imagine a life where I'm not rescuing animals. I just can't. Like they are part of my soul. So it's going to be between animal rescue and then my writings, I think and hope are the way that I can best convey that sense of inclusion and you know, foster the hope that a lot of people have had stripped from them. So it would be between writing and animal rescue. I like to do them in conjunction.
I'll allow that. I'll allow you to
Yes.
rescue and write as well.
There's rescue animals in all my books. And that was not even intentional. That's just how they play out.
What do you think is next for you when it comes to writing? Like, what's the next plateau that you wanna hit?
Yeah, so this next book, it's pretty wild. I look at all these authors and I respect it and they've like honed their craft and they are genre specific, like romance exclusively. And they stick to that and they're good at it and I love that. But for me, I kind of challenge myself. Like every book that I write is different. Like I wrote a romance novel and then my second published book was like dystopian sci-fi. And this time around, why not write a murder mystery? So it's really fun and challenging for me because I kind of like dive into my own version of research, which is like reading all these different mysteries and kind of like deciphering what has made them good and pinpointing like the tactics and the styles and the techniques that I can like use or play off of. And so I don't know. I mean, after I read a mystery, what else? I guess I could do a historical fiction next or something. I don't know. We'll find out. An
I do
autobiography.
there you go. I do love that you're using your writing to kind of put in some non-traditional aspects. And I feel like just from the limited knowledge that I have is becoming more popular. I think somebody that we both know, Liv Arnold, does that as well with mental health. You know,
I
she
love that.
right, like she's all about mental health as well as women empowerment and
Mhm.
consent in her books. So, do you feel like this is something that is becoming more common that people are taking that route to say, I want to write, but this is also really important to me. So, I want to use my writing as another way to amplify my voice?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I love that aspect of Liv. I love that she has these stories that are so multifaceted, and I love that she's not afraid because a lot of, romance writers in particular too, it's supposed to be kind of this fun escape, and mental health is not really a fun subject to talk about sometimes, and it can be a little bit difficult and there's just a lot involved and I love that she is like brave and bold and just willing to incorporate that and I think it resonates with a lot of people For me personally, like, I don't want another I just don't. I don't want another story that's just a trope. It's just the same old formula, like billionaire meets virgin. Like, I just don't. I don't want that. I want stories that have dynamic characters. I want there to be, even if it's sci-fi, even if it's fantasy, I want there to be enough realism that I can connect to the characters. And I think if we are going to make realistic stories and characters and settings, like, you can't really fully do that without touching on these more serious topics. You can't. It's part of us as humans, as a species. And I really hope that is the trend. I will say the best books I've ever read, all my favorites, they fall into a certain genre, but there's so much going on and there's so much character development, and they all include these really fascinating and dynamic protagonists. And I love that. And I hope that trend continues. I would like to be part of that trend.
Well, you have already been I mean, you are your own protagonist, in a sense, with the work that you've been doing and the work that you kind of took on. How amazing did that make you feel to be able to kind of recreate a character, but in real life and do these amazing things and this amazing work that was really scary for you and technically could have landed you in jail.
Hmm.
But you were like, "You know what? This is worth the fight." How awesome was that?
It was amazing. I kind of realized throughout that whole experience, because I just kept saying, like, people that I would talk to and fellow social workers and, my friends and my family, I just kept saying, God, I'm just fighting this like losing battle, but I'm just going to go down swinging. And I kind of reframed that, because it does feel like a losing battle. And there are a lot of very powerful, very wealthy people that are sincerely opposed to giving people human rights. But every battle worth fighting, like, trace it back through history, every battle that benefited humans or animals or the planet in the end, it started out as a losing battle. Change is not easy to come by, and it requires effort, and it requires a lot of courage. And it's a lot easier to just stick with the status quo. It's a lot easier to just like bury your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't involve you or affect your entire planet. But I don't know. It's like every battle that has had merit started out as a losing battle. And since that's the case, then, like, yeah, I'm going to join that losing battle and I'm going to give it everything I have.
And it will become a winning battle for you.
Yes. Yes.
We have talked about some pretty heavy stuff. We have solved some
Yeah.
of the world's problems, so I am very stoked about that. We are going to take a quick turn here before I let you go. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is tattoos. I
Yay.
am once again in short sleeves. I think it's like 90 degrees here today. It's insane. Probably more insane
That's
though.
very hot for Colorado. That's very
Right,
hot. I don't
right.
think it got to 90 the 2 years I lived there.
It's been a little crazy, but we don't have the humidity, so I'm not gonna complain. But
Hmm.
I am in short sleeves, so you can see some of my tattoos. I have a lot. I know that you have a few tattoos as well,
Hmm.
and I would love to hear, first off, what is the most meaningful tattoo that you have?
So I have love in rainbow. So kind of tricky when it's like on my back, but I have
Oh, yep,
love in
okay.
script in rainbow colors. And that is, it was a long time coming. And one of my really good friends is a pilot. She's a pilot at Southwest Airlines, and she is on the peer support team with me. So we provide a lot of like emotional support and assistance to fellow crew members in need. And she does calligraphy. So I asked her to write it, and she did a beautiful job. But it had been a long time coming. It took me a long time to accept my sexuality, and then even longer to embrace it. And even apart from that, apart from me, I stand by all of my friends. I'm 39 in a week. So, we were in our 20s and 30s during the time where, like, it was not clear if gay marriage was going to be legalized. And I have stood with them the entire time, and I will keep standing with them. And that was kind of like my tattoo that represented uh, what I stood for. And then I do have so that's probably my favorite. I have on this arm, I have my book with a little heart in it, and that was my celebration of my first book being published. I have HB, which stands for Habibi, which is the way that I used to sign off all my like letters and my blogs, because it's my love in Arabic, and I got it on my ring finger. I was 30 years old, and everyone kept asking, "Oh, are you ever going to get married?" And I was like, "What? I have so much love in my life. I have so much love, and love comes in so many forms." So that tattoo on my 30th birthday was a gift to myself to remind myself that love comes in all different forms. And my love, that's who I am, regardless of whether I'm married or not. And yes, I am going to get another one at some point. And that's going to be in celebration of my second book being published. And then someday, hopefully, this next book will be published and I'll have to get a third. Well, fourth, but another one.
Right. Do we have any large tattoos in our future?
I kind of like the minis. Is that odd? I just really like them. I love yours. Yours are beautiful. And I love seeing people with like sleeves or with their legs. I love it. But for me, it's like each one represents like a specific milestone in my life. And so I kind of want to be like this canvas, like this smattering of all the different things that have happened. I'm going to need a paw print at some point. I just have to
Yes.
decide where.
Yes. Well, I will tell you, I know some great artists. And so whether or not you want to get it in Florida or if you want to do a little, tattoo trip, I can
A
definitely.
voyage. My first tattoo was in Colorado. This one. This was in
Oh,
Colorado. Yeah. So that was
nice.
when I was 30. I still lived out there. But yeah, I I had only like this one was just solid blue. This one's black, and then there's just a red heart. But then with the love, I was like, this has to be like Technicolor, like
Hmm.
this one. And now I'm kind of in love with color tattoos too.
I have a little of each, so I get that. My arms are pretty much just black and gray, but yeah, I totally get it. And I also want to highlight something else that you said that you bought yourself a birthday present or that was your birthday present. I get myself a birthday present every single year because who knows me better than me? Nobody.
Brilliant,
So,
brilliant.
everybody, that's your homework for this week is start getting yourself a birthday present and make it good. Lisa, where can people find you? So if they want to grab your amazing books, and I cannot wait until this murder mystery comes out, I have to tell you. But if they want to grab your books, if they want to connect with you, if they want to come pet a foster animal,
Mhm.
where can they find you?
So my website is my one-stop shop. It has everything. It has information about my rescue animals. It has like the different endeavors that I've participated in at the airline, and it does have my books. Clearly, like that's actually the homepage of my website. So that's going to be my full name, LisaMichelleWilkes.com, and that's my one-stop shop. And I also like make these nerdy crafts on my Cricut machine that I sell. And all the money goes to rescue animals. So everything, you can find everything there.
I love it. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit today and inviting a furry friend as a
I
guest.
know, this is
I
Sandy, my foster cat.
super appreciate it, and I cannot wait to see what is up next for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a joy. It was just a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media so you'll never miss what's going on. Remember, until next week, you are strong enough, you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.